Hey, what are you? All right. Hey, we're in our last chapter of our book. Why do I do what I don't want to do? Week 10. It has taken us many, many months, but we're here. So I'm very excited. Last chapter tonight with the guys, and then we'll kind of take the rest of the year off and we'll kick back into a new book at the beginning of next year. So with that though, let's jump in with the guys and let's get started here. Let's see. What up? Okay. Make sure all my stuff is not muted, not anything like that. Actually streaming on YouTube, all the things. Usually for YouTube, I have to start it and then let it sit there. And I found this on Sunday mornings at church. And if you don't sit there, then it doesn't actually start. It just is like it has the get going, and multiple times we've not streamed a second on YouTube because I don't get it until we're just done. It's like awesome, that's good. But we're good. Okay, gentlemen, last chapter of the book. We have taken, I don't know, 26 weeks to read this book. No, I think probably like 16, 17 weeks to finish it. But last chapter, cynicism and optimism. Now, if I were to ask you before you read this chapter, what kind of person are you? Are you, let's not use a cynic. I mean, if you want to use cynic to describe yourself, that is perfectly fine. But maybe not cynic, but rather either an optimist or a realist. What would you have described yourself as? Thanks, Brandon, by the way. I gave you I blew you a kiss earlier, Corey. You just
Oh,
didn't see
did
it.
you? I guess I didn't see that. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Oh,
Realist or optimist? Or cynic if you
I'll
just
go.
net negative.
I'll go first since I want to blow kisses at each other. I'll. I would say I'm the middle of the road, maybe. But I feel like a realist more often than I do an optimist.
Okay.
If I think about it.
Okay. Brandon?
Yeah, I think I probably lean more towards being a realist.
Uh-huh.
I approach things very like analytically, not non-emotionally a lot of times. So I don't know, maybe that falls into the realist category then.
Okay. Corey?
I don't know. Maybe y'all can help me. I feel like I'm an optimist, most of the time. I wouldn't say all the time, but I also, it's one of those plan for the worst, hope for the best
Yeah, yeah,
type people, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. You're
I don't know.
pessimistic optimist.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. No, I'd agree with that. I would
can
say
see that,
you're an
Corey.
optimist. Yeah, I would say you're an optimist to me.
Thanks.
Shocker, I'm an optimist. Maybe even annoyingly so at times, as my wife would probably attest to. But okay, so that's kind of going into it, and I think one of the things we want to kind of figure out is where's the balance. All right, so especially with like Brandon and Corey, or Brandon and Eric, where's the balance in terms of realistic and analytical and optimism? And so let's kind of get into the chapter a little bit, and then we'll kind of finish off with that kind of discussion. But so we have this idea of cynicism and optimism. How would you describe, yeah, give me maybe an example of somebody you know that's kind of cynical, or somebody that's just like overly pessimistic. Do you have anybody in your life, work-wise, family-wise, church-wise, or whatever, that is just the Debbie Downer like you described in the book?
You know, I know somebody in my life that I don't know if I necessarily classify him as a Debbie Downer, but like, this is a person that whenever I look at their life, like it seems like they've got everything going right for them, like but for some reason they always have something to complain about, and it never makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what? It obviously, you know, in depth, I don't know what's going on in the background of their
Right,
lives,
right, right,
but
right.
like on the surface, it's like everything looks, but like even what I think looks really good to you, you still have something to complain about that thing that looks really good.
Yeah.
Like how? How's it even a thing?
Yeah.
you
That's
know?
good. That's a real good example. No, that's really good. I like that. I like that. What about you, Brandon? Eric?
I don't know if I have anybody that's like a full-time Debbie Downer, or like just that's their kind of go-to attitude. I mean, there's people that definitely sway that more heavily than others that are in my life.
Okay. Maybe. What is the joke? Like, if you don't have anybody in your life like that, maybe you're the one.
Yeah.
Okay. Eric, what about you?
I mean, I know people that no matter the situation, they can turn it into a negative.
Yeah.
And then there's, you know, the conspiracy theorist. I think that's a definition of a cynic to me. And
Oh, okay. That's good.
The conspiracy theorist.
people out there,
Yeah. So explain that, because that's a unique description. I like it.
you know, just thinking if you're a conspiracy theorist, you're usually pointing out negative intentions of any party involved. That's kind of cynical to me.
That's really okay. I've never thought of that, but I love that description because I think that's probably my frustration. Not that we want to get political, but that's part of my frustration right now in the political landscape is that if you just are always like, well, this is the doom and gloom all the time, like in the political world, I get frustrated with it. And I think it's that reason that it just becomes cynical, and that's not who I am. And so I just get frustrated with it. That's a really good. That's good. I never thought about.
I mean,
it like
it's not just political either. It's
No,
the cultural,
yeah.
the financial world,
Yeah.
the wars, the society,
Yep.
all that.
Yep. That's good.
Yeah.
No, that's really good. I like it. I don't really have anybody in my life that, not that I can think about. I just probably overshadow them with my optimism as a part of it. But so, what are some things that kind of stood out to you guys with as he kind of describes the cynic side? And Corey, what do you see as an optimist? What do you see kind of yourself in that area? And then Brandon and Eric as maybe more realists. Where do you kind of identify with some of this cynic kind of side that he talks about?
You asked that question again. What do you want me to
So
ask?
basically, the first section of this chapter is talking about cynics and describing it. How do you see yourself? One of the things we talked about in this book a lot is that we may not be in general prideful people, but
Mhm.
there's a part of us that is prideful. And so this book has been really good about rooting out and kind of showing us that there are parts of us that are each of these things.
Mhm.
So where in your own life do you see yourself as cynical?
Oh
I
yeah,
guess would be
that's actually really easy.
okay.
Uh, like if something goes wrong, like if I'm having plumbing issues or something, and it for some reason just seems to snowball. And my first thought is like, well, of course this is happening. Like for so like if I have like some terrible life where like I'm not blessed at all, it's like yeah, of course this is gonna happen to me. And I just think everything is going wrong. Just like when a few things start to happen, it's just like yeah, of course it's happening to me.
That's good. So you're basically on ice skates with your optimism, and as
Yeah.
soon as as soon as you start to slip, man, it's just down. It's down
As
and
long as
done.
everything is going right for me, I'm
Yeah.
an optimist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I like it. I like it. All right, Brandon, Eric.
I would kind of say the same thing, but then on page 192, at the beginning of the Living as the Older Brother chapter, it says, let's be honest, it is easier to live with a critical spirit. I just, I guess maybe I've lived my life more like on the defensive than the offensive.
Okay, so describe that a
That's
little bit.
you know, just always preparing for the worst. I guess.
Okay.
Like
No, that
like
makes sense.
what like Corey was saying, things are snowballing. I'm just waiting for the next snowball,
Mm-hmm.
type thing. Um, it just feels more defensive than offensive, and that's I know that's not really the way to live spiritually. I know
Yeah.
that's
No, that's
we
good.
got to be on the offensive spiritually. We
Yeah.
can't. You always want to be on guard against the evil spirits and in the world, but you got to be offensive for the cause too.
Yeah. That's good. Brandon.
I think it's probably similar to them, with Eric and Corey. But for me, sometimes it's heavier when something else happens that's a positive, or someone's has something good happen in their life, and then I'll pick out the thing that's not really that big of a deal, but it's not amazing in my life, and make it a lot worse, or make it
Okay,
feel like
so
it's a
not
lot
in their
worse.
life. I thought you
More
were
of a
doing it to
comparative,
them,
yeah. No,
but you're
no.
doing it to
More
yours.
is like a
Okay.
comparative of like, oh, of course I'm getting this. What in reality is a tiny little, bump of the road. And I
Right.
make it this big mountain in the road, like this huge barrier, and this other guy's getting, everything he needs or
Yeah.
whatever. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's when I get more cynical.
Okay, that's good. That's good. For me, I think it comes when I'm late for things that I get to be kind of a downer, like, oh, this is gonna happen, and this is gonna happen, and it's all because we're late. So that's part of it, and I think when I get super stressed, so not like a little bit of stress, but like next level, overwhelming. I can't think straight. It's just life is. I can't even figure out which way is up. Then I can sit in that overwhelmingness, which makes me more cynical, kind of as and a downer as a bit of it. What are some things that stood out to you from the cynical side of the chapter? It's several pages as a part of it, but what are some things that stood out to you guys?
I actually underlined more in the optimism section, I guess, because it's
That's
what I need
good.
to shoot
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, no, that's good. Brandon, Corey, you have anything?
Yeah, for me, I think kind of along what I was saying earlier, on page 195, where he's talking about the older brother with the prodigal son, and how cynical he was, the fact that his father was blessing his younger brother, who squandered all his inheritance and everything. And I feel like sometimes that is me, when I see somebody else getting rewarded for something, and maybe it's justified. They came back from being away from the faith or something, but then I have that habit of saying, well, why is he getting all that
Right.
when I've been here the whole time,
Right.
kind of
The
thing.
woe
and,
is me.
exactly,
Kind of thing,
yeah.
yeah.
Would you
I can resonate
say
with that. Yeah.
would you say because I agree with you a lot. Would you say you feel that way more towards people outside of your family, or feel that way towards people inside your family?
I think outside the family for sure.
Really,
And I
it's
think,
the opposite for me. For some reason,
okay,
like if somebody in my family, I like I know everything. I don't know. It's a
Right, right,
weird
right, right,
thing.
right.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
it sounds
I
so
think,
weird because like I know everything that they did, and I'm just like, why
right.
do they keep like I don't
yeah,
like I get no recognition. Like I don't know.
Uh huh.
It's dumb.
Yeah.
But like,
yeah.
if it were you guys, like I would be like super stoked and happy and like I don't know. I
It's
don't know.
probably
It's
because you
weird.
do no, but I think that makes total sense. That it's because you do know all the extra things, and so you can look at it with a bit more of a. And I think that even unintentionally, we look at it with a bit more judgmental. Like, is it real? Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Of,
Yep.
I know who you used to be, or who you were last week, or what you did, or this and that. Just to go, is it really real? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that makes sense. That makes sense. What about you, Corey? What stood out to you?
I underlined the same thing. It was talking about the prodigal son. We've become the older brother, completely impatient with immature believers around us, just
Mm-hmm.
wondering when they're going to get it together like us.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just basically what we were talking about.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. I underlined on 192 the end of the paragraph right before the next section and said that's the what cynicism does. It clouds your perspective to the point you can't see the world as it really is, and it's contagious. And so I think the thing that's interesting to me about that thought is he says that's what cynicism does. It clouds your perspective to the point you can't see the world as it really is. Now, if you were to ask us if the world is a positive place, none of us would have said yes. But what he's saying here is that cynicism clouds your perspective to the point to see the world around you, the situations, the moments, as different than they actually are. Which is, I think, a really interesting thing that gets to the topic of optimism and how that's the goal. So, Eric, to kind of start with you, where do you see he describes optimism as hopefulness and confidence about the future. What are some things that stood out to you about the optimism side as someone who is a bit more of a realist or can be cynical? What is stood out to you about the optimism side?
I mean, I underline that sentence as well, just kind of as an entry point to that topic. Um, I guess the confidence about the future side. You know, if things just aren't going well, if we're struggling right now, it's hard to see. It's hard to think about the future. You're worried about the here and now, and the bills coming in now, and sickness, and that's happening now, and all this. It's hard to think about the possible positives of the future and looking forward to those things.
That's good. And I think it all centers around hope, right? As you're
Yeah.
saying it, hope is, what's the definition? Hope is faith in things. I can't remember what the definition, what I've heard people describe hope as, but that as you're talking about it, that's hope. And so the opposite of hope is no hope, right? But is that cynicism. And I think that when you talk about life getting overwhelming or just things are going bad or things just don't feel like they're going in the right direction, what pulls you out of that is hope. So if that's not something, would you say, and this would be a question for each of you, that hope is something that comes natural to you?
No.
No, Brandon?
I mean, I don't have any problem with hope in my
Right.
faith and my
Right.
confidence
Yeah.
in my faith, but I think the spiritual and faith side needs to come into the worldly
Yeah.
daily life side of my hope level, I guess.
That's good. Brandon?
Yeah, I probably agree with Eric. And it's, I don't know, for me, I think it's like when I am not in an optimistic type of mentality, it's usually based on either lack of confidence or trust in what God is really doing in the situation. And part of that, probably stems from the closeness in that, certain time that I have with God. So, but I think, yeah, confidence and trust, I think, plays into it, and having confidence in what God is doing in your life, I think it's going to just breed optimism.
Mm-hmm. Corey, what about you?
No, I would not say hope comes naturally to me. I will say, and I know I've said this a bunch of times, but after kids, I have an insane amount of hope about everything. I mean, it is like completely changed everything. My perspective on everything, like everything just changed after kids. I don't know if y'all felt the same way, but like I don't know. I think after having kids is when I became more of an optimist. Uh,
That's interesting. Why do you think that
so
is?
it's to me, I mean, kids to me are just it's such a blessing, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it is incredibly difficult, but I mean they're such a blessing because you get to see things differently. I used to think, I mean, the world is it's hard, it's difficult. It's hard not to get doom and gloom about it, but when I look at my kids and I know how you're raising your kids and how Brandon's raising his kids and how Eric's raising his kids, like that's what gives me hope. Like we're the ones that take it more seriously with things that are going on now. I mean, we're raising the future. Like that, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, stuff like that is what gives me hope. So
That's good. That's really good. That's good.
How old is your oldest, Corey?
he's 3. Well, about to be 4.
It
Okay.
goes downhill.
I was gonna say just
He goes, just wait till they hit that
yeah.
preteen stage.
I don't want to be cynical, but wait till they start. To
Oh no! Oh, Eric just outed himself for
Oh
cynicism right
my
there.
gosh, yeah. There's always gonna be parents that like to talk like that.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. Okay, all right. So Eric's gonna keep talking. Brandon, what stood out to you about this optimism side?
I mean, I mean, just the fact that it's the importance of it, and I think one of the things you said, like 192 or something, talking about it where it's contagious. On the cynical side, it's contagious. I mean, I think that probably is true for optimism too. I think, especially when I think about, as I was reading, think about how my interactions, around my kids, under certain like situations that our family's going through or something. I think when I approach it, whatever way I approach it, I think the energy in the house, the way the kids interact with it, I think they feed off of that and they respond to that in the same way that I respond to it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. What's up, God of Game? Okay, so tell me this then. What are some, and y'all can each tell me a story. Who are some people in your life that you feel like their hope has been contagious around you? Maybe it's a moment. Maybe they're not always hopeful, but start thinking about that. Who are some people in your life that hope, like Brandon said, is contagious around you, and how does that impact you? So, what did you realize today, Game? All right. So if anybody wants to jump in, go for it.
I don't know if there's anybody that inspires me, but if I categorized my side of the family, I think my side of the family that I grew up in is more realist and on the cynical side, and my wife's side of the family is on the more optimistic and hopeful side.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're good positive influences on my wife's side of the family, and so, but like, I can't really point out anybody that particularly inspires me daily.
No.
I mean,
That's I just mean
they're
even in
good
like a
positive
moment.
presences.
Yeah.
They're good positive presences to be around.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Corey,
I
Brandon,
think for
you want to
me,
go?
yeah, for me, I mean, the person I always immediately think of is my grandmother. John, um, she's always had an optimistic personality. That's just who she is.
Mm-hmm.
She actually um, was diagnosed with breast cancer. It wasn't. It was very, very early on. It was operable. They think that they've got everything, but she had that surgery within the last week and never was concerned. Never. She was just optimistic about the whole thing. And it was just her personality. So when I think of people like that, I immediately think of how she lives.
Yeah, no, very much so. Yeah. Yeah, I can't even remember. I mean, it's been what, 20 years since I was
Probably.
ever around her in high school and
Yeah.
stuff. And yeah, she, I was talking about, like, she reminded me of my grandma,
Yeah.
just like to a T, that they were the same and you just
Hmm.
love to be around them. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So that's good. What about you, Corey?
Yeah, I guess I'd just take the same thing as Brandon. My grandma was a very positive person. One of those always thinking about you, always praying for you type people. You could call her and tell her something that just happened. She's like, "Oh, I was just thinking about you. I had you in our prayer circle today," and it's just one of those. I don't know. Old people are the best.
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah.
I know Aaron probably doesn't think
You
so,
got the
but
extremes. You got the extremes there. But yes.
So will our grandkids say that about us when we're that old? Is the question now.
hope
or
so.
will you be the old crotchety grandparent?
Our generation.
That's that won't be me. So I would say for me, um, I mean I'm typically the the optimist in the room of rooms I'm in, and I think I can see the contagiousness of, I think that, and kind of gets to a point of something I underlined, talking about in leadership, and he's talking about this Harvard study, and I'm even going, oh dang, I need to remember this for this interview I got this weekend. That like that's a huge part of my, I think my leadership strategy is there's always hope, there's always joy, there's like it doesn't matter good or bad. Like I'm excited and I'm excited about things, and that's a good, that I've seen that feed off on people and to carry into people's hearts to where they then get excited about something. And usually, if you're excited about something, kind of that self fulfilling prophecy, it ends up being something that is exciting and you end up enjoying whatever you're doing, whether you're serving, whether you're, doing something that's boring task or whatever. Like the fact that there can be some excitement in it, some optimism looking into it, that's a really, really good thing. So, all right, so think about this question while I answer this from the stream here. But what do you think the relationship is between optimism and joy? How have you seen that relationship kind of in your own hearts, your own faith, people around you's faith, things like that? All right, God of Game. So, who do you mean by he can just take it all? Doesn't take a millisecond to take everything away from yourself. You mean like us take it away from ourselves, or like God take it away? Like, what do you mean by that? So, okay, so joy and optimism. What do you feel like the relationship is? Is there a relationship?
Yeah.
I think definitely.
Yeah. I don't think you can have one without the other,
Okay.
right?
I think they definitely play off each other.
Yeah.
Okay. Eric, you got anything to add?
I think a good indicator of joy is hope, and if you're not hopeful, then you're not optimistic. I'm trying to
Yeah.
connect all the three. If you're cynical and you're negative, that's a sign of not having hope, and I think hope leads to joy in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I would even, for me, I might even flip it to put like joy the foundation of all of that, right? That I have joy, and joy and hope kind of go hand in hand. But because of that joy, I'm an optimist, because joy is more than an emotion. It's kind of the foundation for everything. I can have joy even in the sorrow. I can have joy even in the hard times. I can have joy in the good times. I can have joy in it all. And that to me is that root of optimism. Optimism to me is bigger than the moment. To truly be an optimist is bigger than the moment, and riding the wave of ups and downs, but to be looking forward to go, no, 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 there's always something good. There's always something better. There's always something that can be taken out of this as a positive in the moment, even a bad moment kind of thing. So, all right. So be thinking about some other things that kind of stood out to you in this part of it. But so what do you mean? Or I know what you mean, God, that God can take it all. So give me an example of that game. Like, do you think he does that out of spite? Do you think he does that out of love? Like, what do you? I mean, that feels like a very personal thing, like something has happened to where you feel as though God took everything away. So let's talk about it. Okay. What else stood out to you guys with this chapter on the optimism side?
I wish I could say I was as I'm pretty sure anybody would wish they could say they were as optimistic as Paul. But I don't know if I'd ever be in a
Yeah.
position to ever be that optimistic.
As the optimist in the room, I'm not anywhere close to that. So
I thought it was personally a really big challenge with what he said on 197, which is Paul's life was so intertwined with Jesus Christ that to talk about Paul was to talk about Jesus, and Paul knew that with all the situations that he was put in, and was still optimistic about it, and he knew that because people were talking about him, they were forced to talk about Jesus as well. And reflecting that against my life, definitely would not think that about my life, that people would just naturally talk about Jesus, but they're talking about me. So definitely a challenge for myself.
Yeah.
To become that.
No, that's really good. I really, that's something I wrote down too. Was like, what a goal that is, that when people talk about me, that I want them to be thinking about Christ. I want those two to be hand in hand. So that's really good.
But they're forced to talk about Christ if they're talking about you.
Yeah. No, that's really good. That's really good.
Yeah, I highlighted that same section. I think my first goal is, that the end goal is, yes, for them to see and notice Christ in our lives and attitudes, but just to first notice that you're different. You don't, the way you talk, the way you respond, things. Just seeing that you're different gets get their attention first.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, got a game. So I think it's actually good questions based on what we're talking about with this optimism versus kind of cynicism, pessimism kind of thing. And so it kind of gets to, one of the questions I had for you guys was let me find it because I wrote it down. What helps keep you optimistic, or what helps kind of get you in the mindset of optimistic? And I think that this goes to your question, got a game, kind of the statement of whatever he doesn't, for whatever reason, my mind just isn't in the right place. So for me, what helps me keep me grounded, right? So obviously I'm a much more natural bend towards optimism, but it's not rooted just in like false hope. It's, and I say this phrase all the time, is for me, it's the understanding that God is God and God is good. So God is God, that he's sovereign over all things, so that no matter what is happening, I can trust that he's in control. That may mean that he's allowing things that I don't enjoy, or that I don't want, or that are bad. And that's hard, but that my hope lies in the fact that God is also good. And we know he's good because he sent Jesus to die for us. And so because of those two things, if he's just good, but he isn't in control, then there's not much hope in the goodness. And if he's just in control and he isn't good, then there's even less hope than that, because then he feels like a dictator who just is ready to put your finger on you and squish you when you don't obey. But because of he's in control and he's good, I can trust in that to always have hope and to always have joy, which naturally leads for me to just be an optimistic person. I think most people would describe me as that. So for me, that's kind of how it's rooted for me. So what about you guys? What helps keep you optimistic? And game, kind of the same thing for you, man. What is something that helps get you out of a rut?
I've actually been. I don't think I've ever heard that phrase until you started saying it at the beginning of the year, John. But that's actually something that I've been repeating to myself a lot more, and it really does help.
Good.
I mean, it's a simple phrase, and but to me, it's a very deep, powerful meaning when you start to like reflect on it. So it's something that I reflect on a lot. But I think also what helps me is surrounding myself with other people that are optimistic. I know it's not entirely possible to do it all the time, but I don't know. I, I know Brandon and Eric. I mean, they think they're pretty cynical or realistic, but like I don't know if that was true, I don't think I would want to actually hang out with them because it'd
Right.
be kind of exhausting.
Uh-huh.
So I think if they were like a true cynic, like I don't know.
Right.
So I think I gravitate more towards naturally people that are, uh, yeah, maybe a realist, but also optimistic.
Yeah. What about you, Brandon?
I think for me, what helps me to become more optimistic is uh, I always correlate that to how I am currently in in that time with my walk with God. So
Mm,
if I'm distant, then cynic being a cynic is much easier to be, and I think it's natural. You know, the
mm-hmm.
farther you are from, or the more disconnected you are, I think you just you can't easily see that optimistic side of things. But I've just within the past few years, I've definitely noticed those trends. I think more so because I've been doing more, you know, the reading these books with y'all, just trying to get more instilled in that. But then in those gap times where I'm not as consistent, not as deep into it, I feel that I
Yeah.
can see that um, more than I used to.
No, that's good. I think that's a really good thing because I think for me, again, as someone who tends to lean that way, when I know I'm not, the first thing that I always go to is, okay, what is it? Where am I failing? It's 100% always my relationship with God. I'm not in my word. I'm not in the Bible. I'm not praying consistently. I'm not keeping my mind. I've got my mind focused on 100 other things. I just need to slow down and take a breath and remember again, God is God, God is good. Like whatever it is for me that helps me to kind of recenter on that. So no, I think that's a really, really good one. What about you, Eric?
Yeah, I would say the same things. My ultimate hope is, in Christ and my faith, and that is a baseline for me for you know uh, most of the joy in my life, and then just more practical and daily things is my family. They can be frustrating, but they also bring me joy, and just think about the blessings that they are, um, that God's brought into my life is
That's good.
another thing that helps ground me, um, and bring me joy.
That's good. Um, okay, I'm gonna wait because I got like 10 more seconds of an ad that I think is running. So I want to make sure God of Game hears this. The question I'm gonna ask in a minute though is the balance of realist. Is there any place for a realist, or this book pushed pretty hard towards the optimism side? So is there any place for a realist, kind of as a part of it? But all right, God of Game. So be thinking about that question. Um, what is a brunt? I don't know. Listen, I don't know if that was a typo or if I just don't understand it. But uh, I don't know what that means. But for you, God again, like what gets you out of when you feel like you're in just a bad mood or pessimistic? What helps you get out of that? Um, is it something faith wise, or is it just something in your life that you do? What helps you get out? We're talking a lot about our faith part of it, but what helps you get out of a mood, a bad mood, kind of a pessimistic mindset as a part of it? So, okay, so two and a half of you are realists. I would have told you before I read this chapter because my wife is very much that. And because we laugh that I look at the world through John glasses, which is that everybody has good and everybody gets a second chance. There's always hope in every situation. She's like, sometimes people are just jerks. And sometimes they're just not going to come through, and you have to be okay with that. And so she's a really good balance because she really helps to kind of make sure that I don't go too far on the optimistic side to where it becomes unrealistic, because I do think that that's a potential and I think that's bad. But that to kind of come back to the middle a bit. So, but yeah. So, what about you guys? Where do you feel like that line is between realism, kind of that realistic look at life, and cynicism? Where in your own life do you feel like that line is of, oh no, this is now an unhealthy thing, if that makes sense? What's up, Levi? Levi, are you almost done with the semester? All right, so anybody can answer first.
So you're saying when does it cross the line and
Yeah.
get turned to
So for me,
cynicism?
if I go towards the realistic side of like the realist side, I very quickly can turn into a pessimist. But that's because like my natural bend is optimism. So for me to come down like this way off the hill a bit, I'm going pretty quick. And so like I pass by the line really quick to just looking at things, you know, from a more realist kind of perspective. Boom, I'm down into cynicism. If y'all are kind of starting in that area, or would you say that it's not healthy? Would you say that it's not a good, that no, you feel like after reading this chapter, maybe after some own reflection or whatever, no, God's really just called you to be an optimist, kind of like he's describing?
I think for me, probably more so than I am currently,
Okay.
for sure. I think I need to at least approach more situations with a more optimistic mindset.
Mm.
I
don't
hope
think
there's still room to be a realist, though.
Yeah, I don't think
Recipe.
I don't think being a realist within, especially about certain things, is necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think every organization, family, military has to have a mixture of the two.
I think maybe when it starts impacting your confidence
Mm.
and from a faith perspective and what God is doing, I think you can look at situations and be a realist in a situation and still have confidence that God is working in that situation.
That's good. No, that's
But
really
once
good.
you start going more cynical, then you're going to lose that confidence.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yep,
Corey, you got anything to add on that? Oh,
agree
Eric.
with that. No, I'm gonna leave it at that. I agree with Brandon.
Yeah, that's
I'm
good.
done.
Yeah, I agree with Brandon.
That's
I guess the most recent example was work. Like, so I guess my realist side was that if it does happen, you know, I've got all of this taken care of or whatever. My optimist side is that if it does happen, that's okay because I know God has a plan for all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's going to be unfortunate, but that He's got something for me. This isn't the end of everything.
Yep.
So I get to look forward to whatever it is He has for me next.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good. To be able to have both sides of that. That's good. All right. Anything else stand out to you guys in this chapter? I like this. This is a good conversation.
Yeah, I think John. I think this is a good chapter for your mindset coming up this weekend.
Yeah, seriously. I did. Like I'm looking at this thing going, no, you better believe, like when I talk about strengths and weaknesses, this is part of what I think is a strength. I can rally people around my hope. And if our church needs anything right now, it's hope. And to go on, need to go look up this Harvard study to talk about that as a positive. Like that's one of the things I legitimately hope is positive, whether I get this role or not, that you know, this new position or not. The fact is that I'm still going to be at our church when our pastor passes away, and part of my role, and I've already told this to elders, is to bring hope to the situation and to bring energy and to bring joy and to just help us move the ball forward at times. And that's I can do that with energy and excitement. And I think that that's important. So this was a really good chapter for me going into tomorrow. And again, as we talked about my own doubts and my own struggles and some of that this is good, you know, to remind myself to be optimistic. So All right. So then just kind of talked up. You kind of closed up with just kind of a conclusion. I don't know if you didn't have anything kind of as a part of that. What's kind of one takeaway you're going to take from this book? Maybe it's a specific chapter. Maybe it's a specific vice or virtue, or maybe it's just in general. What is
That I'm perfect and I have nothing to work on.
All right, so Corey's going to start again next week on chapter 1.
I'm gonna have to start over.
Talking about pride. Yeah, it's going to be good.
No,
I think
I was just gonna say this book has a lot of good areas to cover, and I honestly do think it's something that I'm gonna read over again as a good reminder.
Yeah.
Things that I would never have thought of. So
Yeah. Same.
I think for me, just the overall structure of the book of it's not eliminating vices, it's replacing them. And I think just that concept alone, I think is something I'm going to try to carry along of, when I am having some sort of where I'm struggling in one of these aspects, one of these vices, trying to replace it rather than just kill it or squash it, and get out from under it or something. Just try and think of, okay, if I work towards replacing it, it's going to eliminate it by the consequence.
That's good. Yeah. Eric?
Nah, I think I got something out of every chapter, and like they were saying, there's good topics and good points that were made, and I agree with all that. So definitely a good read.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. This is one of my favorite books I think I've read in a long time. Super applicable. I think I struggled in every area, or some of the areas I didn't think were weaknesses. I struggled more than I thought. I think that was one of the things that I was surprised by was I'm like, oh, I'm not a prideful person. Like, oh, well, no, there's definitely pride in your heart. Oh, yeah, okay, that's good. Or, oh, I'm not this, or I'm not angry. Like, I'm a joyful person. I'm not oh, man, no, anger actually does play a part in my life pretty consistently. It's like, okay, no, this is good. So that's one of the things I think I saw was that, no, every part of these things, every one of these struggles is a part of my life at some point, and I don't want to settle with, oh, I'm fine. And this is the one thing I struggle with, or two things, but it's actually just making sure that I'm constantly taking a test to see where I'm at in all these things, which is really good. So cool. All right. Well, gentlemen, that's it for that one. So no more of this book study yet. We're going to do our next one, which is going to be, Eric, you don't even know this yet. Delighting in the Trinity, if I can look it up, by Michael Reeves. An Introduction to the Christian Faith.
I'm always the last to know. I had this one too. I don't know if you ever read this one.
Oh, I have not. The Red Sea rules. The same God who led you in will lead you out. Okay, that's good. All right.
Is that backwards on your end?
No, it looks good on my end. For difficult times. I like that, man. I like that. Okay, so I'll send you a link, Eric. We'll do this one first, and then we'll jump in. I actually really like that one. That will be really good, I think, as well. So this one has 5 chapters. So we'll probably do it the first 5 weeks of the year through January. So, but it's just kind of talking about the Trinity, God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, and just some kind of theology on that. So I think it'll be really good to kind of start off with. But cool. All right, gentlemen. Well, that's it for this part of it. It's done. 26 weeks later, it's done. Cool. All right, I'll see you boys on the game in a minute. You would. You really would. You really would. Okay. All right, Levi. Sorry, man. I knew we were trying to finish up that part of it, but